Hello and welcome to Chevron 7 Locked, a new Stargate podcast. I'm Rob Harvey and I'm here with...
I'm Aaron Percival.
Hiya. So this is kind of the first time we've actually spoke in person. Well, face to face rather, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that we've played some, not Concrete Jungle, some Hunting Grounds together at some point in 2020, but I'm not
maybe
certain about
or AVP.
On 2010.
Maybe a 2010 version. So I know you've been a fan of Stargate. It's been quite an important thing to me growing up, and I'd like to get on to like my history of that. But what was your motivation for wanting to start a podcast about Stargate?
This has been something I've wanted to do for a long time. A long time. I've been podcasting since 2009, I think, was when we recorded our first sort of... so I also run an Alien and Predator thing, and I've been podcasting an Alien and Predator podcast since 2009. There are three main passions for me in life: Alien and Predator, Halo, and the Stargate franchise. And Stargate was something I grew up with from when it premiered on Sky One. You know, I started watching it then, and it's just been the thing I grew up with, the thing that sort of shaped a lot of my personality, a lot of my interests and stuff like that. And as I spent so much time talking Alien and Predator on a podcast, and I've been listening to a bunch of other Stargate podcasts, I was like, I'd really love to do this. I'd really love to spend a bit more time talking about this franchise that has been a part of my life for so long.
So before we get on to like your history of the show, I guess we'll be reviewing the show in order. Is that something you were kind of had your heart set on?
Well, I mean, it always seems like the logical thing to do, isn't it? Is just to go in narrative order. You know, we've spoken, had a little interest in diverging off the beaten track a little bit every now and again to discuss things like the books and the comics. I wish I could say the games. I can't do that. Stargate is cursed when it comes to video games. But, you know, an opportunity to talk about some of the novels would be interesting. And it's not something I've heard a lot of the other Stargate podcasts do. You know, a lot of them all tend to follow the same sort of template. And I don't say that in a... You know, I don't want to sound negative about them, because I really enjoy the podcast that I listen to. But it'd be nice to just sort of deviate a little bit and it not always be in this fresh perspective on the franchise, on the episodes. It'd be nice to talk about these other bits of expanded lore, how it ties into the wider lore, and how the episodes, you know, tie into the wider lore as we go along.
I know this is kind of like an old show that we're checking out. Does this kind of make us real life archaeologists?
Well, I always like to joke about what I do on the other side as a little bit of film archaeology. You know, the editorials that I put together where I explore the different scripts, the different concepts, the concept art and stuff like that. I really do think of that as movie archaeology, and it's the thing I really enjoy. And I've done a little bit of it here as we've prepped for this, well, our next episode. You know, I've gone back and read some of the scripts that were out there, looked at the concept arts and all that sort of stuff. So it is, and I've even got the script for the early script for the pilot episode as well. So I'm going to be hunting down as much of that as I can. I'll be sharing that with you as well, Rob. I realise I should have asked
Perfect.
you before we sat down to record today, because I didn't think to send you the scripts for the film that I'd found. But yeah, I'm very much looking forward to archaeologying that sort of aspect of the franchise and looking at the differences and the way that the episodes of the movie or the franchises evolve from writing to final product on the screen.
That's cool, because, well, the movie, it's such a big thing that we can revisit it further down the line. If we're limited just to one episode, I mean, would be here all night. But yeah, I'd like to check out the scripts and the novelization and kind of revisit the lore of the movie further down the line, you know. So yeah, we can go off on that. And also, today, if you're listening on day of release, it's the anniversary of SG-1. So that would have been 29 years ago today.
I always am made to feel old. And stuff, comments like that, Rob, comments like that hit me in the heart. They really do. Because, like I said, I watched this when it premiered. So 29 years.
Well, let's take a trip down memory lane. So I'd like to share my memories. I first watched the movie on British TV. I must have been about 8 or so. And it would have been like maybe 96, I'm thinking. And I recorded it, watched it a lot. I later got the VHS, and I'd watch that a lot. Take it to my grandma's, watch it on a weekend, make everyone sit down and watch it. And there was some toys and action figures. A lot of those I got from my brother because he would collect a lot of Star Wars figures, keep them sealed. He got all the Stargate ones, and he passed them on to me. And after a while, I just opened them.
The Kenner ones.
Yeah, and I definitely had Jack Daniel raw, and his headpiece came off. He was just a bald dude. Scorer. I had the Horus attack pilot. There was 2 Horus gods, and this one was for the winged glider, which was the death glider, which I also have. I didn't get Kowalski Anubis, the Horus palace god, the Mastage, or the cruiser. So maybe one day. And I also got the CD soundtrack from Virgin Megastore quite early on. Listened to that a lot. Used it in some failed attempts at fan films.
Okay. Stargate fan films.
Yeah, well, I'll never bring this up again because it's just embarrassing. It was mainly just me running around with a mop with my mates shooting each other. But that was a lot of fun. And speaking of AVP, I also used some AVP classic music in my Stargate fan film at the time because it's just stuff I had in my PC. So I finally learned of the TV show, and I didn't have Sky One at the time. So by the time I got it, the first episode I watched was The First Commandment.
Okay.
So that was my first experience of the show. But thankfully, like Sky One did repeat Children of the Gods a few weeks after that, so that I kind of got the gist of that.
You still get to see it early on in the run, though. I mean, First Commandment was what, episode 5 or 6, something like that?
Yeah, so I'm kind of grateful I got to watch it when I did, because when I watched the movie, I was like desperate for a sequel. I thought that can't be it. So I was kind of grateful that we got the show. And the show, obviously, continuity-wise, there's a lot of differences. Some were probably made creatively, some were probably made as compromises because it's a TV show. And it'll be fun, like, talking about those differences further down the line. But yeah, I was excited when the VHSs for the series came out.
Proper aging yourself there as well, talking about VHSs.
Yeah, I liked how all the spines had the continuity. You only got like 2 episodes on one VHS. But I got them at Forbidden Planet, and you could get like $1.99 off because there was a voucher inside. So that was fun. Then I got the director's cut on DVD and eventually got all the box sets. And then near the end of SG-1, my wife, who I just started going out with at the time when SG-1 was ending, Atlantis was starting, she got into it, and Stargate kind of became our thing, and we kind of just, it's something we'd rewatch on occasion.
That's nice.
So what's your history of the show?
So I came to it through the show. I didn't know about the film when it was first airing on Sky One. I would have been 7 or 8 years old at the time. And I grew up in a sci-fi household. My dad was a huge Trekkie. I grew up a Trekkie. Some of my earliest memories are of watching a runabout on the old big fat CRT television we had in the very first house that we moved into. So, an Alien and Predator and Halo, I'm a big sci-fi nerd, So when Stargate SG-1 was starting up, I just saw it as another sci-fi thing. I was a 7-year-old kid. There was a cool-looking new sci-fi show starting up on Sky One, and my dad offered to record it for me. I still remember watching it on a, one of those reusable VHSs that you could get and tape. I still remember watching that first episode at my grandmother's house the weekend after, it had debuted on Sky One, and watching it there. It became a regular thing for me. I will always be thankful to my father for this, but he recorded me every episode off of Sky One on those VHSs. If he wasn't at work, he'd pause it on the trailers, on the ads, the breaks. If he was at work, he'd set it up on a timer for me, and he got most of them. For the most part, there was a couple of episodes I didn't see until much later on. But, he did a fantastic job making sure I was able to watch it, and it just became such an important show for me. And it sort of steered my interests. It made me very interested in archaeology. Well, specifically, ancient Egypt. I started to become very interested in that mythology. I'm not going to claim to be, a savant about it or anything, or to have, really, really, really delved into it. But it's something that interested me enough to, watch documentaries about it, go to exhibitions about it and that kind of thing. And it wasn't until much later on that I saw the movie on VHS. I remember my other grandmother brought me the VHS from the local Asda, at like £4 because it was cheap then or something. And it has been, it's been my comfort show ever since. I've watched every series. It's going to sound awful, but there is not a single episode of the show that I hate. There are ones I'll skip on a normal rewatch, when I'm just like, it's time to rewatch the show. There's some I skip, but there's none I hate. And I genuinely just love the franchise.
Well, that's a nice outlook. So there's not like a season that you think is really stale or you got tired of the show?
Oh, no, not at all.
Good.
I'll say it now. I'm a fan of Jonas. They did him dirty. I enjoy season 6.
Yeah.
I like Cam Mitchell. 9 and 10 should have been the new spin-off that they wanted it to be. But, I mean...
It's nice it got that extra life, yeah. It's good. Yeah. It doesn't happen to all shows.
And it did get that record. I saw where sci-fi was coming from, wanting to beat X-Files, I think it was at the time, that had the record for the longest running American sci-fi show. So, it helped. It helped give it that little bit of an accolade. But yeah, I do think it would have been better had they got to rebrand it as they wanted to. But I enjoy those seasons. I've been a fan of Universe ever since it aired. That was one that got a bit of flack. That is a show that, in my opinion, got progressively better every 5 episodes. That show just kept... The foundations just got more and more solid, and it just kept getting better. Without that early character drama in, the first season... The moment in season 2, Twin Destinies, season 2, towards the middle, when Rush and Young are talking about people staying behind to continue Destiny's mission, and it's a simple moment, a simple bit of dialogue, but it hit so fucking hard. And that was them talking about the amount of people that were going to stay on if everybody got back to Earth, and Young asks Rush, including you and me. And that simple little exchange of dialogue, because of everything they'd gone through in the first season, everything they'd been going through, that moment of them coming together hit so hard. I love Universe. I'm so sad that show didn't get its 5 seasons.
But Universe I haven't watched in a long time, so I'm going to give that a watch pretty soon.
We just been rewatching it. No, I've watched it through with my missus a couple of times as well. Although she always says I skip the bad episodes in quotation marks. So she's like, I haven't seen all the show. You always skip those ones. But no, we go to conventions, to the Stargate ones. That's something I've done, since my sort of mid-20s, when I could afford to buy tickets for a weekend convention. So Rob and I are both UK based. So any conventions I talk about are going to be the UK-based ones. And did you ever go to any of the chevrons that I can't remember who the organizer was, but there was the Chevron conventions, weren't there? Which were the big ones that we had for a
No, I've
long
never been
time.
to any. No, I don't know if there's been any in the northeast where I live, but I'll definitely keep an eye out if I don't have to travel too far.
You'll always have to travel far.
Oh.
The next one's so Chevron did a load, and I went to 3 of them, I think. Again, I was mid-20s. I couldn't afford, well, early mid-20s. I couldn't afford these £150 weekend things at the time. Honest to God, I have no idea how I used to survive in my early 20s off the wage. But yeah, I regret not being able to do them regularly. So, since Stargate sort of withered off into the ether, and it stopped being a regular annual thing, I was like, if this ever comes back, I'm determined to just go to all of them, regardless of who the guests were. Because that was the thing with the ones I went to early on. I went to my first one because Corin Nemec was there. I wanted to go see Jonas. The second one I went to because Richard Dean Anderson was there and I wanted to meet O'Neill. The third one we went to was when I decided I was going to start just doing the conventions, and it ended up being the last Chevron convention before that all went into hibernation. But, it's started up again in the last... it makes me sad saying the 2020s because, we're now nearly halfway through the 6th year of this decade. But, they've started up again. There was some Kalmar conventions, which is a whole drama into itself. We'll not talk about that here, but I gave them a go. That's all exploded. But there's a new company called Star Fury Conventions, and they do like a bunch of stuff, a bunch of specific genre, specific franchise ones, Star Wars, Star Trek, like vampire things. They've started up a Stargate one as well called Ascension. So they did their first one last year, and they've got their next one coming up this year, which I think is August this year in Birmingham.
Okay.
But their first one was down London. So yeah, it is not up northeast, I'm afraid.
No.
They're an experience themselves. If you ever feel up to it, and I recommend them because they're entirely different from like your normal sort of collectomania, London Film and Comic Cons or Sheffield Film and Comic Cons, that kind of thing. Very different experience these weekend.
Interesting. Okay.
Franchise ones.
So I guess we'll quickly move on to the direction of the podcast and like what our goals are going to be. So I was thinking a year from today is going to be the 30th anniversary of SG1. What do you want to where do you want us to reach by then? Are we going to reach Serpent's Grasp? Or is that a bit too optimistic?
I think we can do it. I think we can get there. I don't think that's too unrealistic of a goal for us to do, even with a couple of deviations along the way. Okay,
let's do it. And hopefully we'll have some news on the Amazon revival along the way. And one thing I'd love to do, this sounds crazy, but I want to do a Daniel Jackson death count.
Of course.
Because for him, dying, it's just another Tuesday. It happens all the time. And there's probably a lot of debate about what is a death. And I think we can kind of debate that and do a little tally along the way.
Yeah. I think that sounds fine.
Okay.
We can't do a sarcophagus use count though, because we'd lose track of need.
Not if you're going in it with alive. Yeah.
I just mean in general, because once we hit need, we're just never going to be able to know how much he hit there. But deaths, absolutely.
Deaths. Okay, so don't go anywhere, because also today we're doing a double bill for you. So if you after this, you can go and check out episode 2. We're talking about the movie from 1994. So any final words from you, Aaron?
I'm just looking forward to this, Rob. It's, like I said, something I wanted to do for ages. This is one of my top 3 passions in the world. I own all the books, Rob, all the books.
Okay.
And this has kept me... that's how much this Stargate meant to me is, I was buying the extra media to survive during the dark times after Universe is cancelled. So I'm just thrilled to finally get a chance to sit and nerd out with somebody.
I don't know why I never got these, because people will walk in, I've got 40 alien novels over there. Why have I not got all these Stargate books? So I'll have to up my game and start getting them.
Well, you got the big finishes as well, didn't you? That was something we both sort of bonded over early.
Yeah. So you lent me your copy a couple of years ago, but I hadn't realised that they'd republished it. So
it was like last year.
You sent it to me, and I thought, oh, it's totally out of print. But then they'd kind of got the license for it again, and I could have bought it myself. But thanks for sending it to me. It was good.
You are welcome, because there was 6 standalones across 2 seasons, and then they did a season 3 where it was split into, again, 6 discs, but it was like 2 arcs. A part 1 and a part 2. Yeah. Anybody listening who hasn't listened to those, it's a shame they didn't do more. And one of my absolute goals is to do some Stargate fan audio dramas, audio productions. I just love audio productions. But yeah, go hunt them down. Go find them, because they're great.
Definitely.
Because it's the original cast.
Anyway, that's enough for this episode. If you want to check out more, you can visit chevron7locked.co.uk, and we'll see you in episode 2.
Sounds good. See you next time.